the Kings, Mark Jones. Are we going to try this a third time? Third time's a charm, is what I always say. That's a phrase I coined. Mark Jones, Mark J. Street Jones joining us. Mark, have you got us this time?
Oh, we good, right? J Street? Okay,
I think we're good. Perfect. Mark, how you doing, man? What do you do when there's no college football and no Kings?
Man, that other thing with ESPN and ABC keeps me on the road. I got games 3 and 4 between OKC and Denver coming up Friday and Sunday this weekend. So it's going to be great to do that. And I always do these games with, and this is no lie, with thoughts of the Kings next year and what it's going to look like for us in mind. You know, with Doug, with the new front office, with Scott, and with BJ and calling the shots now. So there's a part of me that's kind of projecting for next year. So I'm keeping busy doing those games, and depending on how many game 6s there are in the around the association in our programming at ESPN, I could be anywhere this weekend. I mean, the weekend after that.
James, before you get to a real question, Mark, I'm actually really, really excited to get to tell you this because I've never actually gotten to tell somebody this before. I tweeted this when it happened. Right. And so now I'm just getting to tell you, you were on game 3 of Warriors Rockets.
Yes.
And Steph hit the shot where he's faced up against Jalen Green at the top of the key and just pulled on it.
Oh, yeah.
And ripped it. And you just said, you're into the call, and you just said wet, and then laid out and let the crowd take it. And that was just a masterclass in broadcasting. I think too many broadcasters talk too much, and I thought that was awesome by you. So great job.
I appreciate that, Kyle. Yeah, in those moments, man, there's nothing that you can say that's going to embellish the scene. I mean, that's where TV is such a powerful medium. So sometimes less is more. That's like I love those moments at Golden One Center when I get to say, Golden One Center, the microphone is yours after a big scoring run or a Keegan Murray 3 or whatever it is. So thanks. I appreciate the kind words, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Mark,
now you can be a professional.
Mark, when you're
I hope I'm around enough, I just hope I'm around enough on J Street and in Midtown and calling the games as a national guy, so trying to figure that one out. I mean, wouldn't you want a guy that can tell great stories about your team and the league and the other teams that the Kings are playing?
Yep.
I agree.
Just me.
All right, so Mark, I got a real question for you here. This OKC Denver matchup, it does feel like I said this to Kyle, and I don't know if he agreed right away, but it feels like this is Western Conference Finals. Like, this is 2 heavyweights right now.
Yeah. Now I know Minnesota would take exception to that, especially looking at the fact that they've dog walked Denver the last few times they played them. I think they've beaten the Nuggets 6 times in a row. Yep. And everybody remembers the 20-point comeback in Denver in the conference semifinals last year. But I agree with you. When you look at Shea and Joker and the seasons they've had, the 2 MVP candidates, team that won 68 games in the regular season against the champs 2 years ago, it really does have a major showdown feel to it. And I wouldn't be shocked that the winner of this comes out of the Western Conference, still. But I love the Ant conversation you guys had, especially in wake of the fact that Chris Finch actually said what he said about him last game. I've gotten to know Ant pretty well over the last couple of summers. He works out down here in Miami a lot. And I mean, I'm always in the gym watching these guys work out, and he's right up there, guys. Like, I can remember his player development coach, Chris Hines, telling me recently that there was a point last year, like Ant's in this routine where he likes to, even on the road, get in, 1,000 shots, shoot 1,000 threes the day before a game, even after a flight in. And they were in San Antonio, I think he told me. And, the Spurs practice facility was unavailable for whatever reason. The facility that they thought they'd be able to get was closed. And Chris Hines told me that he and Ant were driving around in an Uber for half an hour and finally ended up in the basement of a church gym getting up shots that night. So that really speaks to the dedication of Anthony Edwards and just how far he's come, especially with the 3-point shooting,
Mark Jones, television voice of the Sacramento Kings, joining us. Man, I was You're on game, you said 3 and 4?
Yeah, this weekend.
The Denver.
Right.
I don't have a pen. I usually write that stuff down. 3 and 4 this weekend. It was game 1 a little bit of a fluke where, all right, man, OKC just didn't do the right stuff down the stretch, and Aaron Gordon hit a big shot. Or do you think there's genuine concern with Oklahoma City in that series?
I think they've got to be careful now because they tricked off that game. I mean, the foul strategy was poorly executed. In theory, it was great, but when you're not letting enough time run off the clock before you foul, that's malpractice, and they did it twice, and their margin of error just got a little slimmer. And if I'm OKC, I'm extremely concerned because if the game is close in clutch time, I don't know that there's still a more connected team in the NBA at the offensive end than the Denver Nuggets. Yep. Their ability to close games in the last 5 minutes, last 2 minutes, is probably as good as any teams in the NBA. Now, their defense, that's another story. They finished 19th, 18th in defensive rating. They can be had defensively. But when it comes to their offense possessions, if they're within striking distance, they're a threat.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mark, let's skip to the King stuff. We got all kinds of King stuff happening. First up, you've known Doug Christie for a long time, like a couple of decades.
When he was a New York Knick, eating chicken wings in my basement in Stamford, Connecticut. Yeah,
he still eats chicken, but that
edge a little bit.
He still eats chicken wings, but that might be the only meat that Doug still partakes in. Just like, how excited is it for you to see him and sort of his process to go from a player to be gone for a little while, but build his way through the broadcasting world, get onto a coaching staff, and then finally get his opportunity to take over the team that he loves?
Man, it's one of the great NBA stories, I think, over the last since I've known Doug, 20 odd years. When you look at his journey from Pepperdine to getting a rough beginning in the NBA as a player, me reporting on the NBA Today that he got a phone call from the Seattle general manager, which was mean-spirited, basically saying, you better take this money or else you're not going to get signed, to being traded to the Lakers, not getting enough playing time with the New York Knicks that he should have been playing under Pat Riley, and then finally really coming into his own in Toronto and Sacramento. TV, what a great journey. And Doug has always been a very introspective type of basketball talent, being able to not only see himself and read the room well, but having wonderful basketball intellect and knowing its applications too. And the short time that I got to work with Doug in broadcasting, I learned a ton from him in terms of basketball strategy and basketball nuance. And I'm excited to see him execute that now, having the agency to incorporate all of his own philosophies from day one in training camp to day one of the regular season. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. He's ready for the moment.
Do you think there's going to be a noticeable difference as we talk with television voice of the Kings, Mark Jones, here on ESPN 1320? Do you think there's going to be a discernible difference next year between what the Kings look like, maybe on both ends of the floor, now that Doug does get a full offseason to implement it, rather than just trying to kind of like hang on and steer a ship that was really trying to capsize last year? Do you think we'll see a noticeable difference from the Kings on the court?
I do. I think that, roster permitting, I think one of the blueprints is probably the defensive disposition is where we'll see the first kind of profound change and look and Doug's impact. And I mean, I think if you look at the way that the Houston Rockets play, they may not always have a chance offensively, but they hang their hat defensively on the outcome of games, and it's worked for them to the tune of being the number 2 seed. I'm not sure that Sacramento has that kind of personnel right now, but I think if there's a vision, that might be part of it. in terms of Doug being a defensive-minded player, or at least, we talk about, it's interesting in basketball now when you talk about so-and-so is the best player or this guy's the best player. I think there's been, in the way that we reported in the media, a slanting of, we always think that to mean, oh, he's the best offensive player. But
Right.
I think when you talk about ultimate success in basketball, it has to be at both ends of the court. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the way that Doug plays the guys who are on the roster and in terms of the defensive execution. I think you saw a lot more aggressiveness, a little bit more trapping, a little bit more blitzing, a little bit more risk-taking that was, I think, ultimately effective by Doug when he took over this year.
Mark, it's always tough when you have one coach leave and sort of his coaching staff, what happens next.
Yeah.
Just where are you at with this? It looks like there's only, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 guys back from the staff that was here before. And we don't really know how this thing is going to be built out, whether Mike Woodson will come in, whether Bobby Jackson will rejoin the team, any of that stuff yet. But we do know that a lot of these guys are like on to their next place. And it just how tough it is.
Yeah. I know that Doug is probably looking forward to starting with a fresh slate with his guys, that he's aligned with Scott Perry and BJ Armstrong. And, you talk about the vertical and horizontal alignment. I think that, Scott has talked about his background with Doug, and I'm sure that they've vetted out some of the tangible things that they want in players and their tangible philosophies and even some of their intangible things. So, I think when we look at whoever lands on the bench, there's going to be a kind of a uniform philosophy, right? And there's going to be some experience there because Doug is going to be a first-time head coach per se. He's been interim, but first time with his people. And I think he'll do a fantastic job. I think he's prepared. I've watched him in some of the scouts from the time he was doing scouts as an assistant with Mike. And I watched him closely in Summer League last year as the head coach, and he's prepared for this moment. And Doug has great relationships around the NBA too, and I would expect that kind of relationship clout will bear fruit on the bench and ultimately with the players and ultimately with victories next year.
Talking with Mark Jones, television voice of the Kings here on ESPN 1320 Sacramento Sports Leader. You mentioned having clout around the league and relationships around the league. That's something we heard a lot with Scott Perry. How much of an impact can that have in the front office going into a year where we might see some significant changes for the Kings roster?
I think it's going to give Sacramento a leg up on things. If you look at the recent trend in terms of player movement, deals that are made around the NBA, free agent signings, there's been a trend to, you got Tellem in Detroit, you've got Leon Rose in New York, you have Phoenix, all guys who have been former agents now with significant input. And I think BJ Armstrong, with his big background and Scott's experience, I think they'll be able to cultivate the type of, relationships and the climate that will bring about the type of roster that they need, if that makes sense. I think there's a certain amount of nuance and savvy that's required to get that done. And at the end of the day, it's like back in the day, it was always, Boston and Danny Ainge calling Minnesota's buddy Kevin McHale to work out deals, or these things happen in the league. And I think when you have guys that are entrenched that way, it can be beneficial. And I think Sacramento's maybe going to benefit from that this year.
We have Mark Jones, the television voice of the Sacramento Kings, and of course, all over ESPN, a broadcasting legend here. Mark, we can't keep you all day, but I wanted to ask you.
Oh no, I gotta read this text to you because I'm sorry, James. Can you hold
No,
that?
go. Yep.
So I just got a text, and I was asking him about something, right? And he says, this is one of our old guys in Sacramento. Said, Buddy has really bought in defensively and has really improved his technique. He's more athletic than people give him credit for and super competitive and embraces the challenge of guarding the other team's better players. He's really embraced being a two-way player and not just a shooter. Terry Stackhouse. How about that?
Wow.
So that's
Golden
Buddy
State is
Hield.
back.
That's Buddy
That's
Hield.
stunning. That's stunning. All right, before you get out of here, Mark. That's okay, man. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What is the first move that you're making if you're the Sacramento Kings here? Like, how do you get this thing back on the right path, knowing sort of the deficiencies that they have?
Yeah, I think it's a point guard, right? And that's no slight on Keon Ellis, but I think you can bring in a point guard who's ready to contribute pretty much right away and start him or bring him in off the bench. But I think that's probably the most pressing need. And, I think that you make sure that Keegan Murray is taken care of because he's eligible for, his deal. And I think out there in the universe, if you're looking at comps, maybe it's like the Trey Murphy comp, somewhere around there, in that neighborhood. As for, DeMar and Zach and Domas, that's the core. And I think it remains to be seen whether the front office wants to keep it intact or try and get some assets that will bring about that said point guard that I mentioned.
Mark Jones, television voice of the Kings. You can hear him all over ESPN as well. He'll be on games 3 and 4 of Thunder and Nuggets this weekend in Denver. Mark, thank you so much for carving out some time for us. And let's do it again soon.
You got it, Kyle James. Keep up the great work, man. See you
awesome.
soon.
We'll do. Thanks, Mark.
See you, buddy.
One of the best. Mark Jones. Mark J. Street Jones.
That's
our
right.
guy, friend of the program.